On Friday, the 13th of January, 1948, the flag of the United Nations flew at half-mast. Mahatma Gandhi was dead, assassinated. For the first time in its history, the United Nations Assembly set aside a day's session to honor a man. Not a head of state, not a general, not a king, but a man who, without an army, without riches or political alliance, has been called the most powerful figure of the 20th century. Who was this man that all the world should mourn him? Called a Mahatma, a great soul. While young Gandhi was a law student in London, he began to probe more deeply for an understanding of the nature of life, of truth, of love, of power. He studied not only his law text, but also two books which he believed to be the most important literature in existence. One was the Bhagavad Gita, the most ancient sacred book in India. The other, the Bible. In the Gita, Gandhi learned about love, the force that holds people together and causes them to rise above themselves. There are good and evil in every man, but when a person loves, he strengthens the good in those about him. Truth, combined with love, is the greatest force in all the earth. Gandhi was to call its use non-violence, satyagraha, a greater power than that of the largest gun or bomb or army. In the Bible, especially in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, young Gandhi found profound answers to his profound questions. The Gita and the Bible together offered to Gandhi's people the way of freedom and self-realization, and to these beliefs he eventually gave his life. Graduating in law at the age of 22, he returned to India in 1891. He was sent to South Africa to represent the law firm of Dada Abdullah. There, Gandhi rose to great success and personal wealth. But the appalling social conditions all about him weighed on his mind with increasing heaviness. Neglecting his law practice, he began to teach and demonstrate the power of non-violence, which he discovered in the Gita and the Bible. In 1915, this amazing man, now 46, returned to his native India. Multitudes of people gathered to hear his message of hope for freedom and dignity. He told them their weapon was non-violent resistance against the political forces that had held them in crushing bondage. On August the 1st, 1920, Lokmanya Tilak died, the Indian leader of the Congress Party. He had been a man of fiery, militant spirit, but he had recognized Gandhi as his political heir, the mild, slight man of the gentle spirit. The Congress Party, which had been organized in 1885, had become the central force in India's fight for freedom. With Gandhi as its leader, the Congress Party established goals for a new India. The people of the untouchable caste must be given equality and dignity. Indians, both wealthy and poor, must discipline themselves to a new morality. No alcohol, no opium. India's 300 million Hindus and 100 million Muslims must cease their bitter and deadly rivalry. There must be equality for women and a productive economy. In 1921, he began the new program simply with the spinning wheel. India grew hundreds of tons of cotton annually, and yet Indians were unemployed half the year. Instead of sending their raw cotton to English mills, why not make their own cloth? Thus began the homespun movement. And the women were being freed. The veils were coming off their faces. At the Madras Congress, there were clear signs of India's new self-discipline and self-confidence. Gandhi came, his hands pressed together in a Hindu greeting which means, "My love and reverence to the God in you." When the 1928 Qatar Congress convened, India was boycotting British goods and refusing to take jobs with the British government. But under no provocation did an Indian harm an Englishman. In 1930, Gandhi told the people about a letter of protest he had written to the British Viceroy, Lord Irwin. In the letter, he had voiced the Indians' bitter complaint about the type of English rule that reduced them to political serfdom. Great Britain had even taken from the Indian the right to make his own salt from his own sea, and Britain levied a tax on the salt, which the Indian then had to buy. Let there be a conference to discuss these many wrongs to freedom. Otherwise, he must try to point out to the British the evil that they did. He and some of his friends would do this by a non-violent march to the Sea of Dandi, for Gandhi himself would break the salt law. The Viceroy answered through his secretary. No conference. March the 12th, 1930, at 6:30 a.m., 61 years old, clothed in a homespun loincloth, he moved against the British Empire. With 79 disciples, he started a 200-mile walk to the sea. Others began to join them. The Viceroy and other statesmen watched with curiosity. Still greater crowds joined them. From all over India they came. Journalists from other countries were flown in to report on this march, this feeble yet far-reaching protest. He talked to the crowd, saying, "If any violence is shown against the British, then no matter what ends are gained, the march will have failed." On April the 5th, they reached the sea. Then Gandhi walked into the sea, and from it he took a pan of water to be refined into salt. Along the shores of the sea, thousands moved in, each with a container to take out the water, distilling it, gathering the salt in great mounds. Soldiers came and confiscated the salt, and even yet more was distilled. Gandhi was arrested. People across the world, even the American and French governments, spoke out, questioning the British action. In India, millions of people demonstrated their impassioned protests. Soldiers and police sought to quell the multitudes with riot clubs. Still, no hand was raised against the British. On January the 25th, 1931, Lord Irwin announced the end of the salt laws, as well as the release of Gandhi. The Karachi Congress appointed him to represent India at the Round Table Conference in London. He sailed from Bombay on August the 29th, an infectiously happy man. In England, he attended the conference of 112 delegates, most of them appointed by the Viceroy. As the meeting progressed, Gandhi realized that a division was being created. Instead of the idea of a united India, plans were being discussed for a separation between Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, Untouchable, Parsi, and Indian Christian. Meanwhile, in India, during Gandhi's absence, the new Viceroy had made arrests without warrant, suspended court trials, outlawed political organizations and meetings, seized property, and jailed 100,000. Gandhi went home. His wife and young Jawaharlal Nehru and countless Indians now called him Bapu, the father. Bapu began his work immediately. His first consideration was for that part of the great Indian family called the Untouchables. For thousands of years, they had been set apart. Gandhi ignored this strange custom and gave them a new name, Harijan, Children of God. The British, however, perpetuated this ancient tradition of separating the Untouchables by insisting that they have a separate vote in government matters. Gandhi now vigorously expressed his opposition to English treatment of the Harijan. In January 1932, all India heard that he'd been put in jail. Then they heard that Gandhi had gone on a fast. In the face of seething unrest throughout the land, the government took action. 3,000 years of the untouchable segregation was brought to an end. But Gandhi recognized that official legislation would not be enough. Released from prison, he set out to break the traditions binding India and its attitude towards the Harijan. The Congress Party's program to form a new India was slowly proceeding. The people were spinning their own cotton. Many of the oppressive British laws had been changed. The women had been given equality. The untouchables had been freed. And the country and the people had a dignity they had never known. Gandhi was dissatisfied. he was still looking for the answer to the enigmas that were embedded in the lives of his countrymen. So, in October 1934, he announced his resignation from Congress. The essential life of India, he believed, lay in its several 100,000 villages. With his wife, Kasturbahi, he moved home to begin life as a simple villager. The world refused to accept his resignation. Congress leaders came to confer with this simple villager. Famous people of many nations and continents came to sit and talk in his one-room adobe hut. The floor was of swept earth, one rug, a spinning wheel, a soapbox for a desk. For a period of 4 years, Gandhi labored to develop communal rights for the villagers. Then a new unrest began to shadow India. Britain was threatened with war. In 1938, Gandhi was forced back into politics. Serious differences of opinion began to be heard in the Congress. Chandra Bose, now the Congress leader, was saying to the people, "Give me blood and I'll promise you freedom." Gandhi said, "Nations are violently giving demonstrations of savage and futile warfare as a means of settling their differences. Now is the time to demonstrate non-violence as a better means of seeking agreement and truth." In 1939, when war exploded over Europe and Asia, there were many who followed Bose. Non-violence was too difficult, too idealistic, too slow. In 1942, Sir Stafford Cripps met with the Congress leaders, proposed that a new Indian constitution be drawn up after the war. Gandhi called this proposal a post-dated check, left the meeting, and didn't return. He now had only 2 words to say to the English overlords: "Quit India." These words electrified India. They set off an outburst of demonstrations throughout the land. Jails were filled far beyond their capacity. Gandhi and Kasturbahi were among the prisoners. And while in prison, Gandhi's beloved wife died, her head in her husband's lap. They'd been married for 62 years. Gandhi said of her, "She was more of me than I was of myself." After a dangerously weakening fast, the 75-year-old man was released from prison on the 6th of May. What had been accomplished? Muslim and Hindu were engaged in new outbreaks against each other. Britain still held India in its grip. The world's warring temperament was creeping over Gandhi's people. Still he went on working, searching, praying. Then, on the historic August the 12th, 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru, Gandhi's close friend, was commissioned by Sir Archibald Wavell to form a new Indian government. While the new leader reviewed the troops at the frontier, Gandhi quietly and patiently traveled among the Muslims and Hindus who were at civil war with each other. He went to Noakhali, a district 80% Muslim, on a pilgrimage of personal penance, because Gandhi believed he shared the guilt for this internal strife. He walked from village to village, living with them, trying to teach them to love despite their deep-seated enmity. His followers, too, went to work in the villages: Muslims, Harijans, Hindus, Christians. At his meetings for prayer, the Bible, the Quran, the Talmud, the Gita were all read with reverence. The riots died down. On August the 13th, 1947, the flag of independence flew over India. India was free. Pakistan was declared a separate Muslim state according to the demands of Jinnah and the Muslim League. While the people celebrated, the British withdrew their military forces. Although there were still problems to be solved, this was the consummation of Gandhi's dreams. India stood before all nations as a symbol that non-violence could be an invincible force. It could bring about the peaceful solution to international differences. So, independence came to India. At the center of all, Gandhi, father, Bapu. But Bapu was not at the festivities. He had spent the day fasting and praying. There was still much work to do, and he was old. On the 30th of January, 1948, at 5:30, Gandhi went from Birla House to his prayer meeting. A man who feared Gandhi's teaching and power stepped forward, bowed, and fired a shot. Mahatma Gandhi was dead. At dawn, they dressed him in the loincloth he himself had spun, and which had become a respected symbol throughout the world. There were garlands of flowers. The flag of India was draped over him. After a procession, his body was burned. The ashes were sent to every continent and to all parts of India. The spirit of the man was still alive, a spirit releasing truth, drawing people into closer understanding, ennobling human dignity, demonstrating simply and forcibly the power of love.